Hey guys, so today I'm going to show you how to make a DIY hanging clothes rack. And this is something, depending on the type of wood you use, typically this isn't necessarily for in the house. For garage sales, if you're a consignment person and you like to consign clothes, this will give you a temporary space to be able to hang and tag. Or if you're having a garage sale and you want to be able to hang up the clothes, this is one way to do it. So I'm going to show you how to make this. It's actually fairly simple. I am not a professional woodworker, so that should tell you something, and hopefully you too will be able to do this. I get my tools out not too often, hopefully more so now than I have in the past, but really you don't need a lot of tools to do it. So for the rack, I went to the store and I bought some wood. So this rack is going to cost you probably about $12. If you need a hole saw, then that's going to cost a little bit more, but I have burnt through mine, so I had to get a new one. So what this project is going to use is two 2x4 by 96s. So that's a 2x4 by 8, and you're going to get two of those. So I have two of those here. You're going to need a 1 1/4 inch hole saw, right? So a way to cut that hole. So here's what I got, this Craftsman. You'll need a drill, so hopefully you already have one to be able to attach that to. It needs to have a fairly powerful motor. Some of the off-the-shelf ones that you might get just to hang pictures in the house and things might not have that drill feature and might not have enough powerful of enough motor to be able to turn that hole saw, so you don't want your drill to start smoking. You may need some drill tips to get the hole saw out. We'll see. That'll be our next step. And then you'll need some nails. I always use my square here to help me get my lines. You'll need some nails and of course a hammer. Now the other thing you can do is you can use a nail gun, which might be a lot easier. It definitely will be a lot easier, so if you have a nail gun handy, I really do suggest that. I don't want to get mine out. I don't want to drag it out. It needs an air compressor. It's a real old one, and I just didn't want to fiddle with it today. So today I'm using nails. So let's go ahead and get started. So I made mine 56 inches tall, and there's a reason why I did that. You're going to need two side pieces. So let's come back over here and look. So you're going to need two side pieces. We're going to be two identical of these. So I made mine 56 inches tall, and then those four pieces at the bottom are 10 inches each. So by doing that, you use the entire piece of the wood and you don't have any left over. If you want to make it longer or shorter, then you just need to adjust that. Maybe get a longer piece of wood. 2x4s come in bigger sizes than 8 feet. You can get 10 feet and 12 feet, or you can just get multiple pieces of wood. I wanted to go as easy as possible and as low cost as possible. So for me, I went with 2x4 by 8, and then I did a 56 inch. So I'm going to measure out 56 inches first. So I've got my ruler. Just come down the line. And I measured my 56 inch here, and then I went down and did 10 inches after that and marked 10 inches. So 10, 66, oops, 76, 86, and then 96 will be the end of the board. So I'm not too worried about that. And then the great thing with having the square, if you don't have one, I highly suggest it. I use it for all kinds of stuff. You can just come across, take your square here. Let's get a little closer. You can lay your square up against the wood like that. You see there's my mark I made. I made sure both my pieces of wood were even on the end. And I can just go across them both. So this lip here catches the edge of the wood, or the edge of the board, and helps me be able to draw a straight line across both of them. So I'm going to continue to do that. So that's my 56 inch line. I'm going to continue to do the 4 inch line. So that will leave me with two 56 inch pieces and 8 10 inch pieces. So I went down the wood and I went ahead and marked using my square the other marks on it. So you can see we now have 8 10-inch pieces and two 56-inch pieces. So now I'm going to walk over to my saw and I'm going to cut those pieces. Now if you don't have a saw, a miter saw at home, you can use a circular saw, If you don't have a circular saw available, occasionally Home Depot and Lowe's will cut your wood for you. If you don't have too many cuts, they'll go ahead and cut it in the store. So that's something that, depending on how busy your store is and how willing they are to help, they may cut your wood for you before you leave if you've got all your measurements. Again, it really depends. If it's one cut, they're usually pretty good about it. If you need, in this case, we're cutting 2 pieces and multiple times, they may frown on that. But you can always ask. Can't hurt. But I'm going to use my miter saw and do some quick cuts. So I want to show you a really cool trick that I learned. And maybe everybody knows this and I just learned it late in life. But it is something that I think is pretty useful. Maybe not with this project, but it might be with other projects you do. So whenever I go select my wood, you know, a lot of times you go up to the pile and you just grab some pieces of wood. Depending on your project, you may need a piece of wood that's really straight. And not all wood in the pile is straight. Due to shipping, it gets warped. Sometimes the straps that are holding the wood pile together will bow a piece of wood if it's been wet. If the top parts of the pile or the outside of the pile got wet, they can bow. So depending on your project, if you're building walls, you definitely want straight wood. And for this project, we can use a little that leans to a side since we're cutting off some of the ends, but you really don't want too much warping in it, especially if you can help that. So if you go to the store and you pull your piece of 2x4 off the pallet, turn it sideways, and then just look down the wood. And so, you know, you can be fancy, close one eye, and see. So this particular piece of wood, and I don't know if it'll be too blurry, has a slight bow to the right when you get to the bottom. That didn't worry me too much since I am cutting that piece, but there is that slight bow, just to be aware of. If you were building a wall or doing something that was more uniform where you need that, you know, perfect 90-degree angle, then you definitely want to be able to check all your wood before you leave. And some of the pieces can be really bowed. So I always check my wood. I check it on one side, I flip it over, I check the other side just to make sure. So now you can definitely see how it bows to the left because we flipped it over a little bit. So just one helpful tip there if you are looking for straight pieces of wood and you come home and the wood isn't straight. These are plain 2x4s. Probably the $2 pieces. If you want to build something that's a little more high-end, maybe you do want to keep it in your house and display it, you may want to use a harder wood. That's a more finished wood. It is going to cost more for each piece, but you can get oak and poplar and all kinds of wood. Just get something that's, you know, probably oak, something that's sturdy enough but will look nice inside, and that if you want to even stain it, let's say you want to take it to the next level, you could actually stain it too. So, all right, I'm going to cut this piece and I'll be right back. Okay, so I've got my pieces cut. So as you can see, I've got 8 pieces of 2x4s cut into 10 inches each. And I have one of my 2x4s, which I cut into 56 inches. So I use the entire piece of wood, so we don't have any scrap left over. And so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure 1.5 inches up, and that's to mark where we're going to put our hole. So 1.5 inches up. So I've got my line. I'm going to use my square it off there. So it makes a perfect line. And then I'm going to come back and I'm going to look at where 1.25 inches is, because that is halfway down the board. Despite it be calling a 2x4, a 2x4, if you've never known, is really not 2x4 inches. It's actually slightly shy of that on all sides. So I go ahead and measure out 1.5 is the midpoint there, or I'm sorry, 1.25 is the midpoint there. And now I'm going to go ahead and get my hole saw. So this hole saw, so as you can see, or can you see, is going to allow us to drill a hole down the center into the piece of wood. Now, I will have some words of caution here. My drill, the RPMs on my drill is not that high. It is an 18-volt drill. It's not a professional drill. It's not a drill that you would use probably out on the job site day by day by day. But it works for me. So for my around the house projects, this is probably the hardest thing I've asked my drill to do. and it can get a little difficult. So you're going to go ahead and line up that drill bit right there on that hole, or I'm sorry, on that mark that you did in the center. You're going to hold down your piece of wood tightly, and you're just going to press down. Now for me, I have to stop and go, simply because my drill just doesn't have the power of a professional commercial driller. Sometimes I pull it out because it's making that loud noise, and it shouldn't, and that's why. So as you can see, the drill bit came out of the hole saw. I don't know if you can see that completely. So that's not a good thing. So my screw was not on tight enough, so I'm going to go ahead and put another drill on there. And see if we can get that off. So I'm going to use a second drill that I just keep around. Get it tight enough. So go over here. And then I'm just going to back it up. There we go. So we got it out. So let me repair this really quick. So I'm going to show you why that came out in a little bit. There is a pin on the side of your hole saw that holds that in, and it needs to be tightened. So as you can see, let's see if I can get this in here. So as you can see right here, there's a screw there that has to be super tight, and that's actually what's holding the drill bit in place. So mine came out. I had to actually take it out to get the wood piece that's left behind out of there. So let's try this again. So as you can see, we don't have that high squealing noise anymore. So you just want to press down. I let my drill rest on it. Okay, so we can back it up. There we go. So now we have that nice 1 1/4 inch hole there. As you can see, it does leave the wood bit in there, and that can be really hard to get out. So I've tried a lot of different ways to get that out. I have tried drilling pilot holes down the sides and then putting screws in, really long screws, and trying to pull it out. I've used a hammer and a screwdriver and just chipped away until it all comes out. The easiest way I have found is actually just to release this screw, which is why it was loose before, pull out the entire assembly of the bit and the wood, and then just unscrew the wood off of there and then put it back. For me, that's the easiest way. You might find other ways. But here you go, as you can see, and we drilled that hole. So I'm going to do the same thing in our second piece of wood, and then we'll be back to attach the base. So I'm going to show you how I did that. So I took the drill bit out, I just pulled it out, I stuck it in my other drill, and now I'm just unscrewing this piece of wood. There might be easier ways to do it. I have not found them. So that's my third one I've taken out. My first one you can see is in pieces because I used a hammer and chiseled away and knocked it out, and then I used my screwdriver and kind of pulled it out. For this one that I just got out, I'll show you. So I have the bit here. The bit has holes on the side. I stuck my screwdriver in here, and I used that as leverage to be able to get under it and then pry it out after I had loosened the screw on the side. So screwdriver, pried it out. And then you've got to undo the bit now that it's in this drill, undo it and put it back in. And then I'm going to stick the bit back in this one. So it's back in the hole saw, and then I'm going to tighten this screw on the side, which is what's going to hold that bit in place. And so that's the easiest way I found to be able to get that wood out of the middle of the hole saw. So I went ahead and I did the second one. So there's the second one all drilled out. I will say that the casing there is hot to the touch. So you want to be really careful. Your drill may be hot too, depending on the torque that was put on it, and you know, again, if it's a commercial versus a household product, how well it handled that. But this piece is going to be hot, the wood inside is going to be hot, and the drill bit's going to be hot temporarily. You'll notice it left a little bit of fracturing. It's just because of the quality of the wood. I did get the lowest, cheapest wood since I'm using it outdoors and only temporarily. I also used the finished end, the natural end of the product, as the place where I put my 2 holes. The end that I cut as part of the 2x4s, as to make the 10-inch pieces, is what's going to be at the bottom, just because those edges aren't as finished. So this finished edge here is what you're going to see at the top, and not the cut edge that I used when I cut it to 56 inches. Okay? Okay, so now we are going to attach the 2x4 by 10 inches. So here's our poles. We're going to attach one on each side. So we're going to start here and attach one here. But before I do that, I always like to start my pilot holes. So you can see here, I've already started my nails. So one thing I like to do is to go ahead and put my nails in first. Not all the way through, so at least part, so get those started. If you're using a nail gun, of course, you're going to have a lot easier of a time. But since I am pounding nails in with a hammer, I go ahead and start them here, so I'm not trying to hold those 2 boards together. So now I'm going to take this piece of wood here, I'm going to come over here, and then I'm going to attach it like that. So I'm going to line up the bottom, I'm going to line up the side, and I'm going to attach it here. Okay. So as you can see, I went ahead and attached it. So I've got my 56-inch piece there. I've got one of my 10-inch pieces laying across it. I went ahead and did those 2 in. Now I'm going to turn it this way. And then I'm going to take another one where I've started my pilot holes, line it up, and I'm going to attach it here. So it's perpendicular to that board as well as the one I already did. So as you can see, I laid it flat, attached the first one, I'm turning it sideways, and now I'm going to attach the other one here. And then I'm going to continue that for the other 2. Okay, so now I finished the second one. Helpful tip here, when you're putting in your pilot ones, don't get too far from the edge, because you are attaching it to another 2x4 on the side. So you want to make sure that these don't, you know, if I'd put them out here, they would have gone through and not connected to the bottom board. So make sure they're not too far. I think that was probably the maximum I could have gone. So now I'm going to turn it again, and we're back to that 56-inch piece. We can see it. I'm going to take the next piece and put it there. Make sure you're squaring up the bottom, so you can hold your thumb there and line it up so it feels a smooth edge between the 2 pieces of wood, and you want to make sure that you're up against this other piece of wood. And then I'm going to hold it here and nail these 2 in. Okay, so I went ahead and did that one. I turned it for the 4th time, and now I'm putting the last board on, so I want to make sure it's square again to each of these edges. So I hold my thumb there up against here. It can be tricky because you're trying to balance it while doing it, so it definitely takes 2 hands to be able to hold and balance that and make sure, otherwise your screws are going to go in a little wonky. So let me finish. Okay, so I've got the 4th one in. You can see it makes this star-like pattern on the bottom. We're going to go ahead and pick it up. There we go. So if you had all your edges even, it should sit evenly. And we've got our 1 1/4 inch hole here. So I'm going to take it over to my other grouping. So I've got these 2 here. Now you can buy a 1/4 inch dowel rod and stick it through. I did not do that. I like to see what I can use that I already have. And so I have this painter's rod for some reason. I guess a previous house must have had a really tall ceiling and needed that. But it's a really multi-purpose tool that you can use for painting. I use it for other things. I've used it to get balls stuck out from underneath cars, SUVs before. But it does have a telescoping end. So this is one thing that if I just wanted to make 3 of these, I could actually use this and come all the way across. So I could keep going that way if I could get it all the way out. And just make 3 and come all the way out that way. However, I'm going to make a 4th one so I can have 2 completely freestanding racks if I want. If I start adding weight and I feel like this isn't going to bear it, how much I'm doing, it depends on what type of clothes you're doing. Kids clothes, adults clothes, baby clothes. I may switch to a dowel rod. I have lots of broom handles, so I may switch to that 1/4 inch size. 1 1/4 inch hole saw size is really good for just about anything, any handles or poles that you'd have around the house. So I may default and use a broom handle at some point. I may use this painter's rod. I may give in and go and get a dowel rod if I'm going to hang some stuff that has substantial weight. But this is my DIY video for making a quick and easy clothing rack. And of course they can come down pretty easy, store pretty easily, don't take up a lot of space, and highly flexible. So hopefully you learned something. Hopefully you'll be able to make these for yourself and either start consigning or have a great garage sale. All right, have a great day.